Oh, here's the dramatic pause. No, we're live. Welcome to Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your MC, Rich.
And I'm your co-MC, Rach.
Hey, Rach. Welcome to the live show, everybody. See, there's
Yay! We're speaking over each other already. It didn't take long at all. This is where we point out the podcast is usually heavily edited.
So heavily edited. So very heavily edited. But hey, that's okay. Sometimes this is endearing. Mistakes make us human.
Well, the great thing about online conventions and online panels is we're still actually able to do them right now. Because, you know, there's a pandemic outside if you haven't been looking.
Yeah, lots of indoorsy stuff. This is part of Gauntlet Community's Open Gaming Weekend. The October one is the big one, and I've already participated in the game, and I've been on the Discord channel, interacting with some folks. It's been pretty darn fun. How about you, Rach? What have you been up to?
I've been working. And I've been busy recording a secret episode yesterday that will release in the next few weeks, unless we're allowed to say what it is.
I mean, it's already been on Twitter. If you haven't signed up for this Kickstarter, you should.
We may have recorded the Urban Shadows 2nd edition podcast yesterday, so it was so exciting.
It looks dope.
So pretty.
So backing that. Oh, oh wow.
So long story short, I haven't been playing any games because I've been busy, but I have nothing on schedule for tomorrow, so I might drop into a game or two. I am on the Discord right now, though. So.
Fantastic. So am I. Awesome. Well, before we did this, we actually planned ahead, reached out to the Gauntlet forum, as well as the Slack channels for the Gauntlet and Twitter, asking for questions, because this live episode is a Q&A. We're going to talk about our experiences and whatever level of expertise you give folks who've spent a couple of years talking about these games. I don't know. Yeah, up to you. Mileage may vary.
I don't know. Play games, see if they blow up.
Well, you had this little warm-up question, Rach. Do you want to?
Oh, yes, our warm-up question. So, obviously, this Gauntlet Community Open Gaming Weekend, it's an online con. But what do you miss most about physical in-person cons, Rich?
It's got to be seeing my gaming buddies. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons. I kind of fell off of conventions for a while until I connected with the Gauntlet and being able to meet up like every Origins. I meet up with Lowell and Sherry. We all have a hotel room with some other friends, sometimes shifting in and out, and we all go out for dinners and stuff and do games on demand. It's really, really fun to meet folks that I've gained with online and see them in a physical space and not worry about getting a virus from them. I miss that. What about you, Rach?
What, you weren't scared about the con crud before? Not the super con crud?
No, I'm foolish that way. What about you? What do you miss?
I miss the social parts and also the traveling parts. Like, I'm a little bit disappointed, like, because part of the Metatopia experience for me is to travel down from Toronto, where I live, to New Jersey, and then go through the Appalachian Mountains and across the southern tier of New York State and look at all the beautiful fall colors, traveling with my partner, eating lots of junk food and road coffee, or coffee from gas stations, as probably most people would know it. Like, that's part of that whole holistic convention experience. And I also really miss, again, the social parts of hanging out in hotel lobbies, talking about our days and what games we'd played up until like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then going home and going upstairs and pretending to sleep.
Also, what else?
American junk food. Because oddly enough, like, Canada's got a reputation for like things like poutine and donuts, but American junk food is like this whole other tier of junk food. And one of the things I do when I go to cons is like I'll map out local bakeries and go drag people from the convention and like, we're going to go here now and then buy croissants here, or go over there and buy cinnamon buns. I miss stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure someday that we will have cons in a physical space again. Cue
Well,
sad
in
music.
a year or so, maybe. I don't
Maybe.
have any timelines yet.
Neither do I. Well, hey, let me give a little pretend bit of con stuff. I'm going to talk excitedly about the game I played this morning because it's a perfect fit for a plus one forward episode.
Tell me more.
All right. So Leandro Pondoc, who is an amazing GM and great person that I've played a number of games with, he ran a game called Apocalypse Keys. Jamie, who was part of our Belonging Outside Belonging series, they also designed PBTA games, and Apocalypse Keys is kind of a Hellboy BPRD style game. Very mega, like really pushes the Doom. There's a Doom track. You have a stat for each playbook called Darkness. Instead of having, hot or cold and all the others, it's just darkness, and you can fuel up that darkness by doing playbook specific actions, which I felt really thrilled by because it felt like it was Belonging Outside Belongingness pulled back into PBTA. So you had this darkness statistic that you would pump up by taking specific actions that weren't really mechanically driven. You didn't like, I'm going to get more darkness by rolling X. You just did thing in fiction and you'd pump up your darkness. Then that doesn't just stay there. It's not a static thing. You would spend that whenever you're rolling your 2d6 to actually fuel your moves. So that was a really fun cycle that I liked. And there's also Little Bark talking about Urban Shadows 2nd edition. There, that Doom track is your corruption track. If you know what that is from Urban Shadows, you can actually take some Doom moves and other cool things. You have doomed moves, which is great. And then there's an actual XP track where you can buy your regular moves and that kind of stuff. So pretty exciting thing. I liked it quite a bit. There's some cool stuff going on.
Sounds like it might be a potential for a future episode.
Yeah, we like to have games that are accessible for people to buy, and Jamie has this out on their Patreon, so maybe that is a good thing for us to do.
On that note, do you want to dig into our listener submitted questions?
You bet. You want me to take the first one?
Go ahead.
All right. So, from our request for questions from Twitter, we'll kick off. And by the way, if you think, hey, these questions are in a thematic order, they're not. I just put them as we got them or as I saw them. So we may be jumping around wildly through topics. I apologize. I'm not very good at that. I remember one time I did a panel with Marissa Kelly from Magpie Games, and I did that thing. And Marissa was like, you know what? Let me reorder these so that they have a conversational flow. And I'm like, no wonder you lay out books. You think logically. Man, you're good at this.
I considered it. I considered laying out the questions, and then I didn't.
Well, I didn't even consider it. I just said, blah, here they are. All right, the first one is from Blake Ryan. His Twitter handle is Blake Ryan Batman. And he may be on an episode coming up in the next month or so, just so you know, for something. His question was, ever increase the odds to create tragedy? Example, after X happens, everyone has -1 ongoing. After Y happens, everyone has -2 ongoing. So have you ever, in order to create more tragedy, custom moved higher difficulties to force people to fail? If you don't mind, I'll tackle.
Sure. I'm curious to know your opinions on this.
No, but so just last month, I was running Comrades, which, if you look back in the catalog, is an episode that we had, and it's a game about revolutionaries, and it has a basic move that is called Cradle a Dying Comrade. And everyone at the table was super stoked for this, and the stakes just kept getting higher and higher, and we got to the last session when the revolution is literally happening. We pushed the clock a little bit to make it happen, to kind of tick that over because we were excited to have that, and it was a mini series, and it really is made for more of a longer series. Long story short, too late. Things are getting crazy. Everyone at the start of the session I said, hey, let's milestone a little bit. What are a few things that you want to make sure that we address? Because this is a pretty wide spanning event or a revolution on Coruscant, because this was set in Star Wars, because I ran it. So, of course, it was. And they all were like, Cradle Dying Comrade sounds awesome. And then they proceeded to roll 11s through 13s like gangbusters, Rach. The dice were so hot, they should have been at a Vegas table with a big mask on, 6 feet away, winning lots of credits or chips or whatever space money. Anyway, I was like, this is weird, right? Everything is going gangbusters. It's pretty explicit what happens when you roll well with that. But Mark Causey, who is a brilliant gamer, they were playing a kind of bruiser type, and there was an AT big, walking tank thing, the chicken walker, if you remember from Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. And their character, he climbed up, and because they it's Coruscant, they were taking over the Empire, they were kicking them out, and their character, he just like had a blaster, and the guys threw up their arms, and the character said, hey, give up, and then like gave the NPCs an opportunity. And I saw that as an invitation, right? That's that pregnant moment. That's that point in the agendas and principles where when they look at you expectantly, and I said, this is it. And so I had one of them, the NPC Imperial, grab a gun and shoot him right in the damn face. And
nice.
Comrade's harm huge. Yes, he got shot hard. Then he fell off an ATST. That's a good 30 feet, friends. Boom, hits the ground. And by just obviating a die roll, giving the player the opportunity, because I made it pretty explicit. These guys have guns. You've got the drop on them. What do you do? And Mark said, I give them a chance. And they even gave a little bit of a speech like, you guys can make a different choice here. You can walk away here. And that's when Mark's character got shot. And hey, a player got to swoop in and cradle the dying comrade. So we got what we wanted. But I didn't increase the difficulty numbers because I feel like that's a weird indirect cheat. I don't know. Like, I think if I suggested it to the players at the beginning, maybe they would have been cool with it. But to me, I was just like, I'm going to look for opportunities. I'm going to push the rolls. And hey, if I get to make a hard move, I'm going to take it. And that's what I did. What about you, Rach? What are your thoughts on Blake's question?
I have a no but answer as well. And it's actually like similar to your situation. So overall, I don't like trying to control the tone of a game, like a Powered by the Apocalypse game, especially with dice rolls to create tragedy, because it's not the way I want to engage with tragedy as a player or an MC. If you want to make a situation tragic, I would use MC moves to mess with the player's stuff or the player character's people. Just being put in a position where triggering a dice move just means that there's an overwhelming chance of failure if you put like such a big negative modifier on it. Like a -2 for a lot of characters is going to knock you down to like 6- pretty quickly, especially if you got bad luck like me. So thinking back about tragedy and examples of dice rolls, I was thinking too, there is currently, it's a little bit on hiatus, but I'm playing Duet Apocalypse World with my partner Rob, and we had a situation where one of my characters is the Master D, and she decided to hunt down the NPC who wanted her establishment gone. She brought like her little entourage with her, so her bodyguard and 2 sort of second, third in command figures. We're like, we're going to solve this problem. It's going to be great. It won't haunt us anymore. And then she goes to attack this guy, and then I got a 7-9, which is not a terrible roll. And Rob, who's the MC, said, so this bad guy is going to attack you because you tried to do, I don't remember how I elaborately tried to defend or disrupt him, but that doesn't matter. And this is harm is established, and it's going to suck. And either you're going to get in front or your bodyguard is going to sort of snap and realize what's happening. And he's going to get in front of you, and he's going to go down because he's an NPC, or you can get in front. We roll the harm move, and then we see what happens. So I'm like, all right, fine. Like, can't waste this NPC. We got all the way here. Even if I get like a little bit beat up, I'll live for revenge or whatever. And then I rolled the harm move because my character ate the attack, and it was a 12. And I don't know, Rich, how often you've looked at the harm moves in Apocalypse World, but rolling high is super duper bad.
So like, bad.
12 is like, you are screwed. So then my character woke up like 48 hours later and then realized like everyone who went on this expedition, she's still alive. They dragged her back, but nobody's talking to each other. The whole establishment is in complete disarray. Everyone knows retribution is coming, but we don't know what shape it's coming in. And then like one of the second in commands kind of like fumbly confesses her love for my PC, and there's no time for us to act on it because who knows if the world's going to end in like the next 5 minutes. And that is so beautifully tragic and messed up. And it brought me so much joy, but it's not something that would necessarily have fired having like this increasing stacking like negative dice modifier.
That's pretty dope.
It was so good. It was so upsetting in a nice way, I guess.
I love the confess the love and then don't get to act on it because of other terrible consequences.
They had to go clean up my establishment. They needed leadership.
Nice. Cool. So do you feel like we tackled that one? Anything more to add to?
No, I think that's a pretty thorough exploration about using dice modifiers to make tragedy. The short version is, find other ways to screw up your PCs instead.
Let's move on. On the Slack, Alan Reese asked to turn a question back on the Inquisitors. That always scares me, that little preamble. In all your PBTA gaming, which is your favorite move? I might be prepared to accept favorite kind of move. And then why? He hit us with the why. I like that. You want to go first, Rach, since I hogged it that time?
Sure. So I was on hard move a little while ago, and if you go to the hard moves,
such a good episode.
Talking about oracles and urban shadows. What's your favorite playbook in that game, Rach? I don't know, but we're not going to talk about urban shadows right now. We are actually going to talk about a quirky little game called Escape from Dino Island. Rich, are you familiar with that?
I am, and I get to try it in just a week or so.
So good.
I know Alexi Sargent hit me up and said, "Are you interested in this?" And I'm like, "Please, please, please, please." I'm so excited to try it.
So my favorite moves from that game, and probably one of the favorite moves I've encountered in the last little while of PBTA interviews of gaming, are the safety moves. So the safety moves are a group of 3 moves called Lay of the Land, Instruct, and Scavenge. And part of the trigger of these moves is tell the other characters, the NPCs, PCs around you, a story. So you do the thing, and then you tell them a little bit of your background. For example, with Scavenge, it's when you and another hero take a quiet moment to search for useful objects or information, tell them a story, and roll plus clever. Each playbook has a different list of story prompts. For example, you can play the kid, the obnoxious 12-year-old who got brought along on this island full of dangerous dinosaurs. They have the story prompt, the most annoying thing your parent has done. Meanwhile, you could have the paleontologist who has a prompt like, why your arch rival is a hack. And what I love about these is they give a structured space for these intimate, not necessarily sexual, but emotionally intimate character moments that I really enjoy in games. It's very on brand for that type of storytelling too, which is, of course, this is where you learn the character's backstories of these quiet moments as it's slowly revealed over the adventure. And I really like that it gives an opportunity to flesh out your character's personality and backstory over the course of the game, rather than front loading it all in character creation and going, well, this character isn't quite what I assumed them to be. Rich, what's your favorite move and why?
Oh, so this is going to sound weird. I love lots of moves, right? I love them all. They're all my children. All of the moves are great. if I think about the one that I've most often used and engaged with, it will be Lose Yourself in a Substance. It's a move from Cartel. I have ported this move to 3 different games. Of course, I reskinned it for Hut Cartel, which took a lot of looking through Wikipedia to find various illegal, illicit substances and drugs to map over from Cartel. And I also hacked it into 2 different play-by-posts, one for Monster Hearts 2 and another one for Urban Shadows. Unfortunately, the first edition. I'm not the cool 2E kid yet.
Well, none of us are quite yet.
Quite yet, not quite. The Lose Yourself in a Substance, I really enjoy how interesting it is in allowing you to abstract out the idea of doing drugs. And it's not just like heroin, it covers everything. It could be alcohol. It's losing yourself into any kind of substance, because for the dark urban supernatural, all that kind of stuff, even if you want to go Euphoria style, Euphoria HBO series, Euphoria style Monster Hearts, all that kind of stuff, that's within the fiction, right? And I like having a move that allows us to not have to hand wave it, also not have to talk through a whole lot of it, because I'm pretty ignorant about most illegal substances. So kind of a young babe when it comes to that.
Be careful what you say on the air. This is being live streamed.
Exactly. We'll leave it right there. The Lose Yourself in a Substance offers rewards, right? If you in Cartel are successful with that move, you can clear stress. There's no harm track in this game. It's just stress. So it's really valuable. It's a good way to quote unquote heal, especially reinforcing part of those grittier aspects of Cartel. And I found it to be pretty interesting in Urban Shadows and Monster Hearts as well. Now, the way that it works is really fun, because you roll with a stat, and on a hit, you do a thing. So stress and Cartel. In Monster Hearts, I tweaked it so you could potentially heal harm or shed a condition. And in Urban Shadows, I'm working with the Soul Player. This is the play-by-post I'm running with Heidi, my good buddy. We allow her PC to gain the benefits of a Let It Out move, which is, superpowers kind of thing, because Let It Out does have some benefits in first edition. That pick list is pretty cool, and it felt like a thing you could potentially gain from weird drug experiences. Or you can also heal harm. The thing is, for all those games, that particular move on a 7 to 9, you have to choose a reaction called a drug move. And that drug move in Cartel, they're purely fictional. Like accuse a loved one of theft or betrayal, or overlook a crucial deadline or event. In my Monster Hearts in Urban Shadows hacks, I actually threw in a little bit of mechanical result choices as well. So, and the thing is, the player gets to choose from the pick list of which one of those bad things you want, which I like. So I stuck in a few little mechanical choices, like take -1 on going with a particular stat until the high wears off, and a few other things. But the cool part is that the player can just ignore that. Oh, I don't want -1 on going. I'll take this other thing, like forget something important or whatever. And then we get to roll on with the fiction. And I really enjoy that. It's almost in a way similar to the way the first time I engaged the idea of sex moves in Apocalypse World. Oh, this move gives us permission to have that in our fiction without having to go into the nitty-gritty details, or wondering if, is this a thing that we can have? Well, there's a move right here, right? It's already front and center. And if somebody hasn't lined or veiled that out, then it's cool, right? That's a thing we should expect to potentially happen in the game. Long-winded answer. Lose Yourself in a Substance is my favorite move right now.
I think the point of giving yourself permission is interesting, because it kind of feeds into our next question too, based on what I read of our answers.
Yeah, cool. You want to ask it?
Sure. This is also from Alun Reese. I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly, from the Slack.
It's Alan.
Alan, sorry. Alan Reese. Is it too obvious to then ask, what is the most disappointing move in play that felt cool when you read it? Okay, Rich, what was the most disappointing move that you thought was going to be awesome?
I thought oftener right from the Savvy Head, which I've also seen in other games, but I'll just kind of keep it to Savvy Head. That's where I've seen people choose it the most. I thought that was really cool. Let's read it. Oftener right. When a character comes to you for advice, tell them what you honestly think the best course is. If they do it, they take +1 to any rolls they make in the doing, and you mark an experience circle. Now, keep in mind, because they're saying take +1 to any rolls, to me, I interpret that as when a player character comes to you for advice. Sounds pretty neat, right? A great little like team up deal. Oh, we got to go up against this crazy gang leader. What do you think we should do, Savvy Head person? Give them my honest opinion. If they go do it, you get +1s and I'll get XP. Win-win. Except players almost never engage with that in games that I've played in. I've seen, I don't know, half a dozen different Savvy Heads over the years. I mean, this is a game that's been out for 10 years. I've been playing it a lot. And people just ignore. I've the one where Savvy Heads, I've had a player who actually said, well, no one ever engaged this. Can I just swap it out for a different move? I'm like, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can. I'm not sure why players don't seem to be inclined towards that. I've suggested it, like at the outset of a particular session. Hey, y'all, don't forget the Savvy Head has this cool thing that will give you +1s. But I think, at least in the games I've been in, that maybe players don't like getting advice from other players because it kind of funnels them towards a particular action or reaction. I'm not entirely sure. It just kind of bums me out when people get that and they think, oh yeah, I'm part of the team and I can help them out. But and it gets left on the table every time.
No, I've tried to play a Savvy Head once, and then I took Oftener right because I thought it was such a cool idea, and I had the exact same crappy experience of no one came to me for advice. But I'm so happy to give it. I think I am right. I'm not going to brag about it. Yeah, just okay. So at a similar angle, I've had moves that felt awesome fall flat, not so much due to poor implementation, but rather due to the MC and I not seeing eye to eye about how that move should work. But my biggest disappointment is, now I've mentioned this on the show, I'm pretty sure, and it falls kind of in the same wheelhouse as your example, Rich, is inspiring from the Quarantine in Apocalypse world. It's the same in first and second edition. The move is, when another player character rolls history to help you, they mark experience. Thematically, I think this is so cool because the Quarantine is someone who has been locked up for 50 years and is now engaging with the world and doesn't always know what they're doing. But it could lean both like, hey, you're kind of screwing up, so all these experienced people in the apocalypse are going to step in to help you out, or perhaps you've taken a stand and they're inspired by you and they're rallying behind you to help you out, even though you're out of your element. And it's great, but nobody ever triggers it. And I tried to play a Quarantine with this move for a whole session, and nobody at the table would interact with it, even though I was part of a group of people who should have interacted with it. And then I went to the MC and went, I'm just changing this. Like, you can't tell me no. This is a waste of space. I'm crossing this off. But it's really weird. It reminds me of, because we've talked about belonging outside belonging games, lures seem to have the same struggle. People don't intuitively think to trigger other people's lures. And that's like when you interact with another player character a specific way, they gain tokens or you gain tokens. Same issues.
Yeah. That's been a thing I've noticed too, is those lures just get left on the table. Sometimes I think our pro players that we've engaged with, some of them are like, yep, I'm hitting that lure and it's really cool. Although I think you and I have stumbled into lures like, oh wait, really? I get a token?
We did the thing. Tokens. I could use these to do things now.
Nice. Sweet. So let's continue on with Alan Reese. What's the best fight/confrontation resolution mechanic you've ever come across in Powered by the Apocalypse? Asking for a friend.
Oh, my answer is not going to be good. Can I go first because you have a more thoughtful answer, Rich? My first reaction is people play player characters who can fight. What? I'm supposed to engage with these mechanics. I really like kind of scoundrelly manipulative characters who will talk their way out of situations. I don't play combat characters very often. It's not like my favorite happy fun place. The fight mechanics that interest me the most are not resolution mechanics more than interesting little mechanics that help bump up those less combat or less combat focused playbooks. For example, there's Wielding the Arcane, which is on the Scholar playbook of Urban Shadows, which is when you unleash by invoking an arcane item or relic, you may choose to treat your rolls at 10 plus without rolling. The item is permanently and obviously damaged or consumed in this process. And that really changes the game for combat for me, playing someone like the Scholar, who is the person who is like the supernatural items broker. I mean, they're not going to fight, but if they do get in a fight, and they're either preparing and they're being thoughtful about what artifacts am I bringing to this situation, or they're caught kind of flat-footed, but hey, I've got this bag and it's got relics in it and I'm here to mess your day up. It's so good. It's not a permanent bonus because you do it once and then your stuff breaks, but it does let you go on a blaze of glory so well. So Rich, as someone who probably plays more combat characters than I do, what's your favorite resolution mechanic?
Oh man, it may be a bit of recency bias. I'm not sure. But I have really enjoyed the conflict combat resolution system in Impulse Drive, which is the sci-fi game about misfits that you and I played in our Plus One Forward home games set in Star Wars. And I just kicked off a series of it in the Farscape universe with some of my buddies from Minnesota that we've gone online finally. And so the thing about an Impulse Drive fight versus like Apocalypse World is, so you start off, you're going to roll to enter. It's actually called Firefight, is the main shooty, fighty, hacky, uppy move. And you trade damage, right? You roll, you can choose to do more. You've got weapon values that do the thing, and then you take a certain amount of harm and armor and all that good stuff. But the thing that's really cool is you have some options, like you can double your damage by discharging a lot of the weapons that you have, but then they overheat. Like imagine Mass Effect, right? It gets really hot, and now you've got to recover. So there are, for lack of a better term, like built-in kind of stopgaps to the combat to allow for different kinds of moves, to allow for a little bit of flow in the combat, a little tactical without getting to the point where you're going like tracking hit points and you're rolling and, or like in a World of Darkness game where you like roll to hit and then you roll your damage and then you roll to soak. It's like, it's not super dicey, but it allows for the moves to have some variability. And then it ticks off the thing that's really, really hot. You take damage, which has mechanical impact, versus, say, harm. You can drop somebody off of a building in Apocalypse World and nothing's going to happen until it gets real, real bad. Until then, they're just, hey, the clock is advancing. And at some point, maybe harder to heal, but you don't take any minuses. In Impulse Drive, you'll take some minuses to those particular harm ratings, so you don't want that. So you can push it to stress, and stress will just keep going up, and it's a little harder to recover stress. And the thing about stress is when that stress track fills up, it's just 5, that ticks over to a calamity. Then you, the player, gets to choose from a list of, I believe, like 6, 7 calamities, and the stress track will clear. Those calamities are playbook specific, and some are really cool. Like some are tragic, some are epic, but they will always tilt that situation and get you out of that combat most every time. Like it's some of them are, you got a chance to win this fight, but you have to sacrifice a limb and you're going to end up with a cybernetic eye, or not. Some of them are old war buddies show up to take care of this problem, but then they need you for a thing. So it's really, really fun to see those calamities and how they will just flip the script. And that's one of the things that I love about Impulse Drive, is it's never just like a slog, bog standard shoot fight and you're done, and you just keep going back and forth. Like, I'm at the one end of the hallway, you're at the other end of the hallway, and we shoot until somebody runs out of a certain number. There's a whole lot of ebb and flow in there that I like a lot. Honorable mention goes to duels versus NPCs in Hearts of Wulin. That has a really cool approach because of the idea of scale. So you figure out with the MC which scale your opponent is on, and there's a 3-tiered approach. So if they're below you, you just roll to see how awesome you are in defeating them. And even on a miss, you're going to win, but at a cost. If you're equal in scale, you can win at a cost, narrate your loss, or end up deadlock, which I think is kind of awesome. Like that whole thing of 2 samurai staring at each other across a bridge kind of deal. And then they'll run away, right? You're deadlocked, and then you got to figure out what to do there. Fun story. And then this is the crazy part that I have never seen before in a PBTA game. If they're above your scale, you lose. You just lose. You roll to see if you get the chance to narrate how you got your ass kicked. That's how. That's what you're rolling for. Bananas. The cool thing is it's not a forever deal, right? It's a scale thing. It's built to emulate wuxia movies and series. So you can learn new techniques. You can team up with other PCs. So you can even those odds and move the scale up and down. It's not a forever Darth Vader will always take you down type deal, although really he probably kind of should. But that's fine. This is wuxia. It's not exactly Star Wars. You can't do Hearts of Wulin in Star Wars. Oh, wait. I did that once. Anyway, I really like the duels versus NPCs in Hearts of Wulin.
You can always take on Darth Vader by stealing his shuttle anyway.
You
which
can.
Totally did Impulse Drive, and it was great.
It was hilarious.
Haunted us for the rest of the game.
Do you want
to go continue for the Slack questions, or do you want to take the live question we got?
You know what? Let's hit the live question. I'll do my best. Jolene on YouTube. They've asked, what's a genre of a game you think would be great for Powered by the Apocalypse, but no one seems to have tackled it? Let me just first say, after I saw that question, I went to the Apocalypse World, apocalypse-world.com PBTA, which lists all of the bakers have gathered and listed all the PBTA games. I don't think it's a comprehensive list, but it's a list. 95. There are 95 different PBTA games listed on that website as of like 3 minutes ago, just so we know. There's a lot of PBTA games out there. I have not read all of them. Not even close. That said, what genre would you like to see a PBTA game of?
Me? So I haven't reviewed the list. The 2 genres I can think of is I always bring up, pastoral games. I mean, we did get Wander Home recently kickstarting, which is a Belonging Outside Belonging game, which is pastoral, hono bono, heartwarming, charming games where it's about making everyone at the table feel good. Non-PBTA examples include Ryotama and Golden Sky Stories, The Whispering Road, which is an older one. No one's ever done that in as a mainstream Powered by the Apocalypse game. The other thing I was thinking of when I saw this is a bit of a cop-out. I want to see a mecha game, but I want to see a mecha game like Gurren Lagann. Although I will admit Gurren Lagann is basically Apocalypse World already. Like Yoko's the gun lugger, Simone is the driver, but something that brings in the mecha aspects, which is completely bananas in that show anyway, and nothing is real and physics don't matter. Studio Trigger energy, but empowered by the apocalypse. I would be all over that. Make it happen, somebody. I will give you money. What about you, Rich?
This is hard. I'm gonna go with my own personal bugaboo because I started to dip my toe into this and then shied away because actually designing a PBTA game from scratch scares me. It shouldn't. I would want a sports game. Of course, selfishly, I'd want a baseball game. That's my dream. That's my white whale. So I actually am designing one using the Black Hack as the core, not PBTA, although there are some agendas and principles influencing and all that good stuff. But yeah, I feel like there's something there as I continue to make this game. I keep thinking, what if I pulled it back and we had playbooks? But I'm gonna carry this through the end and make this the game that it needs to be. But I would love to see. I know there's some kind of Gridiron related PBTA game out there, but I have not actually played it.
I think there's a there's nothing like really mainstream I can think of where I could point to and be like, yeah, that's a sports game. Sports is like an underserved sub-market of tabletop role-playing games, at least in
It's
the
so
English
true.
market.
It is a shame. It is a shame. Even like we could go with an anime style thing, which would probably be even better for PBTA. Some kind of anime, like Big Wind Up, would
Well, that's what I
be
was thinking of.
fun.
It's just like there's so many sports anime that bring in these specific narrative plot beats, right?
Absolutely. I feel like there isn't a whole lot of sports related TV out there. And I think PBTA is great at emulating genres.
Hmm.
So maybe that's why the two have a disconnect. Hmm.
We had a couple of sports related shows. I remember like a lot of hockey stuff for a while, but also I live in Canada, so I noticed those kind of things.
Yeah, and then one of my favorite shows of the last 5 years is Pitch, which was a Fox show that was canceled after one season because Fox cancels everything I like after one season. Um, but it was really, really good. It was about a female pitching in the major leagues. Really, really cool. Mark Paul Gosselaar from Saved by the Bell was in it, Rach. You know you love him, right?
Oh man, that's a deep cut. I work with people young enough who don't know what Saved by the Bell is.
Well, it's coming back. All right, let's move on. There is literally
Next question.
from the oh, you got it. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, do you want from Mark on the Slack? When does Powered by the Apocalypse shine, and when does it fail the group?
At its core, I feel the Powered by the Apocalypse shines when your group really wants to nail a particular genre, to emulate that cool movie or book or TV show, or play a mashup with several iconic character types within that genre to see what happens. It's also masterful at play without much prep, and improvisation is a big part of it. Collaborative play is great in Powered by the Apocalypse. Where do you feel like PBTA shines, Rach?
I think it shines when you have a group of players and an MC who are really into exploring both their characters and their characters' relationships in an uncertain world. You want to have a group of players who want to push those stories and those characters hard, and mechanics that help support exploring what the characters do, and just getting like a nice cohesive whole where everything that happens in that storyline feels like it's happening at the best point for it to happen. Like when you don't necessarily feel punished for doing something that might be a detriment to your character. Where do you think it fails, Rich?
So there are, as I said, at least 95 PBTA games. So I'm sure there may be some that don't fail at this, but in my experience, PBTA games aren't so much great at long-term play. PBTA is a good mini series style game. And when I say long-term play, I'm talking like 2-year campaign, 4-year campaign, right? Not 10 sessions in Apocalypse World. That's the sweet spot. And some people call that long-term play. I don't, because it come from like D&D back in the day where like it was your forever game. So I find it challenging for that. And also the other thing is that where it fails is like building things up, like making things better is hard in PBTA. It's a fail engine, man. Like it's hard. And we even talked a little bit about that in our Urban Shadows episode. And I can't wait for folks to hear what Mark had to say about what he's trying to do about those holding spaces. I love that term. I'm totally stealing it. I stole it from Mark.
It's going to be a trendy term soon, I think.
Super cool. What about you, Rach? Where do you feel PBTA fails?
This is an interesting one because I think it says a lot about some of the people I play with. I think PBTA falls apart if you have someone who is trying to actively subvert the genre that the game is playing in. And I say that with caution because I do think PBTA is a great space if you want to take a playbook that is very clearly an archetype and explore and ask questions about that archetype and why we assume that archetype in media to be what it is. So when I played a Quarantine in Apocalypse World, they were the nicest person in the apocalypse. I was exploring this idea of, the Quarantine has a lot of a military background. What does that mean? Does that mean you're a soldier? Well, are you a combat focused soldier? What's your opinions about the more combat focused things? Stuff like that. Particularly the special is a very interesting subversion. But when you have players who are looking at the genre and trying to break it in a way like where they aren't triggering moves and they aren't acting in good faith, I find it tends to ruin it. And I mean, I guess it would happen with other games too if you had players who weren't acting in good faith and kind of going along with what the game is trying to do. I mean, I've sure play tested a lot of games, and just breaking it for the sake of breaking it does not result in a good play test. So it doesn't result in a good real game either.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you, Rach. I'm not sure if that's PBTA like failing. It feels like that's a conversation to be had at the table, and you should kick that person out. It's probably a guy.
Well, it often usually is a guy. I mean, yeah. I sometimes do weird things with playbooks, and I see what you're saying. I just find the game kind of falls over a little bit more dramatically in Urban Shadows, where you have someone who's like, I'm the werewolf and I refuse to honor any debts ever. And okay, now there's no debt mechanic anymore, I guess.
Wow. Why are you here? Why are you here? Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. All right, let's move on. We have 15 minutes left within our hour. Alexi Sargent at the Gauntlet Forum. What are the most interesting mechanics or concepts to bring back into baseline PBTA games from offshoot systems like Forged in the Dark or Belonging Outside Belonging? And I actually had a different answer when I was talking about Apocalypse Keys, but I did type some stuff here too.
You want to go first? Before Apocalypse Keys? Oh, I've got mine is Scandalous. Okay, so we're gonna try to keep this PG. I was talking to Rich off air about this one recently, but one of the more interesting mechanics and one of these sort of like parallel subsystems is stealing time together, which shows up in Firebrand's games. They're basically the Firebrand's equivalent of take a seduce, manipulate role and then the special move and then shoving them into one mini game. It's a very sexy mechanic to the point where I don't know if I could read the exact mechanics on air in case we get in trouble. But how the move mini game in Firebrand's, your moves are basically mini games. If you've never looked at it, if you haven't, you should. It's really neat. But how the game works is the player characters flirt with each other. You have one player who says, my character does X, may I? And then the other character decides how they react. And it becomes a social dance, which is more profound in Firebrands, where there is a dance mini game that kind of follows the same pattern. So it's like, oh, you dance, you have a romantic moment, and now you're going to have an intimate moment. But it starts asking interesting questions about how these two characters or more than two characters interact with each other. Do they draw closer because of this intimate moment? Do they push people away? Do they use it as an opportunity to form a relationship? Do they use it as an opportunity to, maybe further political agendas? Do you get busted? Because you can get caught or interrupted as part of this mechanic too. Great scandalous stuff, right? One of the things I enjoy about Powered by the Apocalypse games is specials do call attention to this idea of intimacy in role-playing games, but there's not a lot of structure. Usually they just kind of happen, or you stumble into like a sex move in Monster Hearts or an intimacy move in Urban Shadows, and you have this moment of, oh, this is clearly where this thing happens. We're in agreement the thing happened, right? All right, let's move on. I don't think exploring those kind of sexy mechanics are great for all games or all people, but I think it would be a neat thing if you're a designer to go and have a look at how that mini game is constructed and how it's using Powered by the Apocalypse ideas. Rich, what about you? What's something that people can steal?
Man, I just jumped over to read Firebrands and found that and just skimmed through because you won't read it aloud. It looks cool. But I'm gonna actually grab the text from that and send it to my wife. Hey, honey, what do you think about this for our Dungeon World duet game? Ha ha ha. Okay, back to the question. I think base building and faction level politics in Forged in the Dark games is really cool. I've seen it in games like The Green Law of Varkith for Dungeon World, Teens with Attitude, and also Impulse Drive, along with the legacy games from UFA UFO Press, and also bite marks. So I've seen it in a bunch of different places. I'd love to see it pulled back. The idea of a resource that you kind of pour things into. It's a little different in each of those, like Teens with Attitude, everybody levels up together, and it's mostly about building up the team. In an Impulse Drive, you have a ship playbook or an outpost playbook, which, by the way, Rach, is really cool. But that thing kind of the thing in Impulse Drive grows on its own. It's not like you're pouring points into it from your own advancement kind of thing. But I'd love to see different options along those lines. I think it's really fun to have folks do a unified resource. This is a thing in Mutant Year Zero that I like a lot in the original Mutant Year Zero game, where you had your base or your, oh gosh, enclave, I think they called it. That'd be my big thing to take from Force in the Dark. Belonging outside belonging. I like the choices within playbooks where you choose some things you are and a few that you aren't. I think that was Riley Rethal was the first person to really talk about that in our series. I think that's cool. Like, that's really, really neat. It's a lot of times I'm like, I like, okay, this and maybe this, but I got to add this. But the idea of like, definitely not this thing is as striking as a choice. Like a choice against is as striking as a choice for. I'd really like to see that in some playbooks. That's a thing that I think is super dope.
Keeping an eye on time. We have about 9 minutes. That might be time to do 2 more questions, maybe?
All right, let's try it. Kyle, aka Techno Scald from the forum. Do you prefer detailed moves, as in most Powered by the Apocalypse games, or a streamlined approach like in World of Dungeons? Can I kick this one off a little passionate? I'll try to do a Reader's Digest. I vastly prefer the moves in most PBTA games which have defined triggers and lead to well-defined pick lists. There's really something so exciting about that moment of decision making where you can get some of what you're after, but you have to leave behind something else, like the Pack Alpha for the Chopper in Apocalypse Rules 2nd Edition. You try to impose your will on the gang, and they do what you want, or they don't fight back over it, or you don't have to make an example out of one of them. You get a 7 to 9, you only get one of those, and each of them are really complex. Like, you may end up having to kick the crap out of one of your gang members just to get them to do what you want. That's good. It's meta level, granted, but I love those lists in the really well done ones. And my favorite games are inspirational and very flexible. So you can make those choices, then jump back into the in-character, kind of behind the eyes mode of play very easily. To me, World of Dungeons leaves behind some of that fun collaboration of PBTA games where players trigger a move, they roll, make choices, and the play passes back to the MC to plug those inputs into the world and keep rolling. Wodu does speed up play, yes, but in my opinion, it pushes the game back to a less collaborative, mechanical mode in my experience. It kind of takes away part of what makes PBTA really sparkle for me. And so I don't normally play a lot of Wodu games as a result of that. What about you, Rach?
I too like the more detailed moves in standard Powered by the Apocalypse games. I think they bring a lot of flavor and character to different playbook moves. I pulled 2 examples from 2nd edition Apocalypse World, the Faceless and the Battle Babe, 2 very combat-focused characters. But to grab 2 random combat-y moves from the playbooks, with the Battle Babe, you have something, not something, but a move like Visions of Death, which is when the Battle Babe steps out onto the field, they're able to, depending on how well they roll, declare someone who lives and someone who dies. Maybe they declare just one of the 2. Maybe they have a vision of their own death, like that. This idea very much like being a Valkyrie, sort of, in a way, but you're able to read the lay of the land. In juxtaposition, the Faceless move that stands out to me is "Oh yeah," which I don't know if you knew I was going to do that, but years ago I was in a Apocalypse World game where the player would read out that move like that every single time, and it was redonkulous. But yeah, the Faceless for "Oh yeah" smashes their way through scenery to get into or away from something, which is very different from that cold, sleek badass of the Battle Babe. And I like that both are able to exist in the same world. And I don't think you would get that with more of a streamlined game. The one space I would actually call attention to with the streamlined games, World of Dungeons, is I've seen not commonly discussed, but within certain circles, that they're very good for exploring old adventure modules in more indie mechanics. I like adventure modules. I collect old Star Wars ones because I think they're fun. And I know people who have run old D&D modules using World of Dungeons. I think that's a really neat idea, but it does lose the collaborative storytelling because it turns out Powered by the Apocalypse doesn't really do adventure modules well. But with the streamlined, less collaborative, there's a little bit more space to do that. But again, it's not my favorite way to play.
Yep, I think we're agreeing a lot there. I'm going to jump down to the positive and negative one since we're 5 minutes away from time. Does that sound good to you?
Oh
Rach?
yeah, this might take a while. This will take a good 5 minutes.
Red Magus 77 on the forum. That's Farrell Riley, who is, by the way, Gauntlet OG. Like he's from the original Gauntlet when it was in physical space back pre-pandemic days before everything went online. What has been the most positive and most negative shift in gaming you've seen in the last decade? You want to start with a negative shift and end with a positive?
Well, let's end on a high note, right? So what's your negative shift that you've seen?
It's got to be the continuing problems with gaming camps, the fiefdom, the diaspora of gaming, the whole trad to indie divide, the OSR against the story game split. It's tiresome, man. I wish we could just love the games we love and laud them and praise them and not try to tear down other folks' fun. I was on a walk with my son who's about to turn 15, and I shared with him a phrase of "don't yuck someone else's yum." I stole that from someone else. I thought it was pretty great. Like, here's the thing. I know the games that I like. I've been gaming for literal decades. I also know the games that I probably won't like. I know what gaming isn't my bag. And the Intercontinental Group of Awesome makes a joke that my bag is very small. I have a small bag of games that I truly enjoy.
Tell us more of your feelings on historical RPGs, Rich.
I suck at them, and they make me go into hives because I can't get history right. And this makes me sad. So I don't play them. I avoid them like the plague. I also don't like mysteries. Like, I suck at mysteries. I'm the worst. Just hand me all the clues and let me roll a die. Otherwise, I'll just hang back and try to look cool and have my character smoke something and say things randomly. I don't know. There's the deal. I don't bag on those games. They're not bad games. They're just not for me. And I love that there is enough gaming for everyone to have things that are for them. I just don't make it a value judgment. And at least I try real hard not to get involved in that fight. What is a negative shift you've seen, Rach?
Oh, this is going to get me in trouble. The thing I dislike the most is sort of related to factions. I dislike gaming critique and criticism evolving into hot takes and sort of extreme opinions in order to just sort of like, I guess, aggressive positions on matters. So you come out loud and hard, but also short. Reactions that are meant to, or opinions that are really meant to provoke a reaction. These have always been in the community, I think, because nerds like having passionate opinions about things. But I think particularly with Twitter becoming, at least for me, a big space where I interact with gaming people, you're only limited to a set amount of characters. So you have to go in hard and fast, and there's not a lot of space for nuance. We're reduced to sound bites and knee-jerk reaction replies, basically. However, what's something that you enjoy from coming out of the gaming community over the last decade?
Let me warn you, I'm going to take a cheap answer. In the last decade, Apocalypse World came out in 2010. I went there. I definitely say that's the most positive shift for me. I'll try to be a little more detailed with my answer to justify it. Apocalypse World solidified for me a number of techniques that I'd already danced around and used in games that I was running. It gave me a framework to have those conversations with players, to let them know that I'm a fan of their PCs. Like, I have literally never read that in any other game, expressly saying you are a fan of their PCs. I always was. I feel like Apocalypse World was less revolutionary than just like help to codify things that we had developed over the, cargo cults and weird conversations that we gamers had pre internet 2010s days. I like the idea of being able to tell the players, hey, when I make things hard, I'm not coming at you. There was a very aggro style of GMing that existed in some D&D games that I participated in, and it wasn't how I wanted to play. So I really love that. I love that Powered by the Apocalypse and Apocalypse World introduced us to that, and also new ways to emulate genre that I feel like still is impacting game design in really awesome ways. What about you, Rach? Positive shift.
Oh, I have like 30 seconds. As someone who enjoys indie publishing in general, beyond gaming, but especially in gaming, easier access to publishing software and printing facilities and distribution. Because I think that has changed the landscape so much over the last decade. I remember when I was starting to get into role-playing games, I was trying to like buy books from like the designers, and then getting them shipped up to Canada was very challenging. Nowadays, however, I really think this barrier to entry dropping has really helped the Powered by the Apocalypse community flourish, and there's a lot more room for experimentation. Like, if you have access to software and admittedly a little bit of money to spend on the side, you can go and write a game and put in a PDF and put it out there. You don't even need to charge people for it. You can do pay as you want. You can give away for free. You can really easily distribute your ideas. And that's so cool to someone like me.
Yeah. And heck, man, if you're still working on it, you can still release like some playbooks, the basic moves, and like lean back to Apocalypse World or Masks or Monster Hearts or whatever for support, and then actually play it. It's really, really awesome. Thanks everybody who has submitted questions to us. We really appreciate that participation. We hope you've enjoyed this hour. I certainly have. Rach, thank you so much.
Thank you again. And it does occur to me that I complained about hot takes, and we did a whole hour of hot takes. Oops. Gotta like go.
I'll just leave the hot take where it is. Awesome. Cool. And to everybody who's listened to this live, thank you. We'll be dropping this in the podcast feed. So if that's how you're listening to it now, thank you very much. We hope everybody had a great con. We're here on the Friday night as of this recording. There's still a few more days of awesome NotCon going on.